Hello, welcome to another edition of Information Friday. I'm your host, Tamaros, along with my co-hosts,
Mia Haskins
and Anna Illis.
And today's subject is, in a racist society, moving beyond the adversities and striving in the midst of it all. The definition: the Little Rock Nine was a group of 9 African-American students enrolled in Rock Central High School in 1957, Arkansas. What do you guys know about the story of Little Rock Nine?
Well, I know that it was an attempt to try and integrate Little Rock, the school system especially, because previously the schools had been segregated and they were trying to combat de facto segregation, and it got pretty tense. Like, those black students had to be escorted by the army because that's how volatile the situation was with the white people and the adversity that was going on there. Yeah.
Well, I know, like, just kind of similar to what Anna said, the governor of Arkansas was the one who wanted to basically, like, not allow it to happen, and they tried to prevent it. And, like Anna said, like, this wasn't the time. This was in 1957, so right in, like, Jim Crow, like, integration and separation and stuff like that was the same time. And so I feel like the situation, like, it allowed them to try to, like, I mean, I hate to use the word integrate again because I've been using it, but basically integrate the system. Blend the system. I don't know. Like,
integrate is good.
Yeah, integrate the system. And these kids, like, they were very brave because back then, like, that's scary. Like, they had to go through some scary things. Like, one student, I forgot her name. I'll find it. But she was, like, acid was thrown into her eyes, like, just going to school. Her name was Melba Patillo. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. I don't know. But yeah, she had acid thrown to her eyes, and then another student, her name was Minnie Jean Brown. She was verbally abused and just, like, assaulted, and confronted a lot. And she had ran into an accident with the boy where she had dropped her lunch on him, and she was suspended for 6 days for accidentally dropping something. Honestly, that's ridiculous because we accidentally drop a lot of things, and just to see, like, if that. Like, that's just how easy and how fast they wanted to get them out of their school, just for little things like that. You can't, like, you can't go here. Like, you need to go home and to be removed.
I barely have words.
So let's start by telling them who the Little Rock Nine are. So Millie, you got the names?
Oh, we have Ernest Green, Elizabeth Eckford, Jefferson Thomas, Terrence Roberts, Carletta Walls-Lanier, Minnie Jean Brown, Gloria Ray Clarmark, Thelma Mothershed, and Melba Patio Bells.
And that's Minnie Jean Brown.
Minnie Jean Brown.
Yeah, they from the South. Minnie Jean.
And I can't remember of who, but I also do remember one story of, if you actually look at the picture of Little Rock Nine, the really iconic one of the white woman right behind her who's screaming.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was, of course, something very nasty. And it was only, I want to say, like, a little over 10 years ago, she finally got her apology from the woman. And, of course, that, got an award and trophy and recognition for...
Congratulations! You're actually a nice white person now. But, wow!
How do you feel like the Little Rock Nine has affected America? You could say affected America today, or how has it thrived?
Well, I'd say a lot of the lessons of integration, it didn't spread as far as it definitely should have, because today we still have, high-income and low-income communities, with, like, the low-income communities tend to be of color, and the higher-income communities tending to be white, and, like, the de facto segregation that's going on. Yeah.
Well, I think, and this is Miss Dolores. Let me bring this up because I know one of my last classes, they did the equation of money and people. But I think more so when it comes to racism, I think that it's less about money and it's more about people and their attitudes, because there are certainly very wealthy African Americans that still get treated shamefully in this country. I mean, even Oprah told a story of when she was shopping on Fifth Avenue and the woman had the door locked to her boutique and would not open it for her. So I don't think that even with the wealth, that would erase the hatred that has been brewing in this country for many, many years. Unfortunately, it wouldn't. I wish it would.
Yes.
I feel like specifically in schools, like that's definitely still a big thing. Like OSA, even at OSA, or you more say this is more effective in, let's say, a Catholic school or a private school. Like you see black, it's like you can still see it between Catholic and like Catholic and private schools. Like for instance, St. Mary's, like that has a lot of like people of color that go there compared to what O'Dowd. Well, O'Dowd is kind of like it's integrated like very much so, but not a lot. And just, or compared to what St. Joe's and Alameda, it's not very integrated there. And I know like my mom went there and she was like, it was a small, she graduated class of 1999, and it was a small, like a really, really, like she was friends with all of the black kids at her school because it was so small. It was such a small group. And I feel like that's the system. Like you see, our black kids, they all have to opt out. If you are in a low-income family or middle income, you're basically opted to have to go to a public school. And you don't get the same education as you would at a private school because it's so expensive. It costs so much money. Even with financial aid, that could still set someone back. And I feel like that sucks because that can dawn on a parent. Like, I can't give my kid that education because we don't have this. And that's just like setting them up for failure sometimes in some ways, because not all schools care about their students. Some teachers just go there just to get a check and just to get paid and are there because they have to be there. And I feel like that's what really sets our students down, because they're like, well, my teachers don't care about me, so what do I need to care about myself for?
Well, I think that's where your self-awareness and your self-reliance has to kick in, because certainly the students from the Little Rock Nine had teachers that didn't care about them.
And yet
certainly they had, right. So this show is, we want to talk about the persevering in the face of adversity. And if anybody should get medals for that, it should be the Little Rock Nine, because certainly their teachers didn't want them to win. You know, the principal didn't want, the governor of Arkansas didn't want them to win. So they came up against quite a brutal crowd every single day. And they still persevered. So I think that when we start talking about what's happening in the classroom, it's more up to the student who feels that they're at a disadvantage to take that disadvantage and flip it to their advantage. Because nobody's going to just give you a helping hand. Very few people are going to do that. So you have to look at that and look at history, look at the history of where you come from and go, because of this group of 9 students who got acid thrown in their face, who got the suspensions, who got spat on, who got kicked, who got locked out, I'm going to make it. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to stop me from making it, because they went through all of this to prove to me that I can make it in the midst of adversity. I think it's your responsibility to push yourself harder.
And that's what I think is really just so beautiful. It's just that spirit, just that's always been there throughout all of history of, we're going to keep moving, we're going to keep going forward, and someday,
and that's the song, yes.
Exactly. We're going to have
keep on moving.
You know, up at this point, at that timeline, it started out with just 9 students, and now, I mean, we can just look at the world today. And, of course, as I see it as, you know, in a more, you know, if though we went left and didn't integrate and we still just kept on it, only had our black schools, well then those only black schools would know how to not necessarily aid, but lean into what certain black student needs are, because the needs of every student, because of the society we're in, is going to be very, very different, which is what HBCUs, you know, tend to care to. But of course, as the Little Rock Nine, I can be very thankful and appreciative that I'm able to go into the school that I can, and that I'm able to have certain students or certain people within my life because of the integration.
And this was like 1957. This wasn't that long ago.
Exactly. I mean, these people are still alive today.
Right.
So
I think only one has passed away in 2010. Yes. So it wasn't that long ago, you know, and the struggle continues.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel that there's not enough resources to elevate communities, you know, like the black communities. I don't want to overgeneralize, and if you guys want to chime in. No,
that's a true thing. We need more aid.
Like, and I find that there's a lot of, like, shaming people for, you know, just, oh, you're poor, and, like, not really caring about it. Like, there's so much apathy, I'd say, and it's just, like...
So let me ask the question. If again, it's about the government coming to our aid, what about the Little Rock Nine? What about Madame C.J. Walker? What about all those people, the Tuskegee founder? What about all these people who persevered?
They had
if we need them to come to our aid so much.
The thing is we have to come to our own aid. With those people, there was a fire pressed on them so hard that instead of going down, they went completely like that. And if anything, they, you can say, blossomed and bloomed and became the great heroes that they are today. So,
yeah.
I feel like back, like, in that time, it was a lot not a lot easier, but, like, people were more into it, like, than now. Like, it's, like, a trend to be woke. Like, it's a trend to say Black Lives Matter, like, a lot of that stuff, and I feel like that's because of social media. And to where back then they didn't have, like, the internet. Their only form of, like, communication with the rest of the world was through TV. And I feel the only way that your voice could be heard was through protesting and just going out and actually doing something, to where now people feel like if they say a tweet, then you're there with them people, like that's you're genuinely there, and like you're not hands-on, like you just have to sit behind a computer, and most of the time it's not even them, it's their assistant or their manager or somebody that's controlled under their social media accounts most of the time. And I feel like that's where we went wrong with a lot of things, and I feel like that's why a lot of our movements have died down than back then, because they were able to actually, there are people who genuinely wanted change, and not instead of just people who are just doing it just to be like everybody else. Like everybody is just doing it just to say Black Lives Matter because everybody like wants to say Black Lives Matter for like
in this day sorry.
No, I was gonna say, do you feel that now because of how easy integrated schools are to get into, you know, public schools or whatever, because no matter, even if not necessarily a good school, there's still going to be textbooks within that school you can read and teach yourself. There's still going to be libraries. You're still going to be able to learn. So do you feel like now of how easy it is to become, and how much, you know, that people are just getting really lazy and just slacking off? Because in other countries, education is a privilege. Only very few out of entire, you know, class, ethnicity, or group within that entire area can get access to education under the class system. But now, you know,
I feel like, and like a lot of our, like, for instance, like a lot of our black men, like in order to get into colleges and stuff, they have to play a sport. Like, it's like that sport is your ticket to college. Like, I know for my cousin, he goes to UCLA and he got accepted on a full ride for football. Like, that's what you have to do. And like when I was speaking to him about his major, he had to choose the easiest major, because for a lot of those majors, you have to have a certain GPA. Oh, no. And a lot of those things were not interesting to him. He had to choose political science. I was like, you like that? He was like, no, but that's like, that's what I know. Right. Like, that's easy for me, because those schools are made for people who are like up there, who have had a good education since kindergarten. And I feel like that's where they set you up at, because that's where it starts. Kindergarten and elementary school, that's where your education starts. And if you're having a bad education from there, then you're set up for failure. Like, not necessarily like you could teach yourself as you get older, but you don't know anything going into those schools. You don't know anything. Those teachers teach you everything besides what your parents teach you at home. That's your basic learning. That's where you learn English, math, like how to subtract, add, multiply, divide. And I feel that's where it also leaves our black women out, because we can't play, like I can't go out and play football and get a scholarship on that, and a lot of girls aren't interested in sports. Like, it's not very common.
Softball scholarships are super easy to get.
Softball. And then like for me, like I haven't done volleyball that since I was younger, and then going to a school where no sports are offered, it's like a little bit harder. But I feel like that's where we get locked out of schools, because they just feel like we need to, like, if you go to this school, oh, what you do? You play a sport? You play basketball? Like, what you do? Like, I just can't be smart. I can't have this education. I have to play a sport for me to be able to go here just like you. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And I feel like that's why a lot of these schools, like Stanford, that school was made for people, like, when the school was first founded, it was made for people who didn't have much money. And now we see that's an Ivy League school.
Yeah,
that school costs so much money. And I feel like that's where it becomes, like, you get locked out. And a lot of our kids who go to school, who are in college or who just graduate, they go straight to a JC because they're like, well, it's too much money. When you go to a JC, you can save your money. And I feel like that's where you get locked out because, like, everybody wants to have that full school experience, but with the system and how much school costs, it's not, you're not able to do that. And nobody wants student loans and have to pay student loans for the rest of their life because that's a lot of money.
Wouldn't it be nice if all of college was free?
It would.
It would be. I mean,
Yeah, like they do that in Europe in some places. Like, college is free, and, like, my mom was like, sure, she didn't have much to live off of, but at least she could afford it as, like, you know, she came from the Hungarian, not the suburbs, come on, she came from it's not urban Hungary,
those who are joining
rural
us
Hungary.
just right now, we're talking about the Little Rock Nine because we want to touch on the topic of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who his day is coming up next Monday.
His birthday.
Happy
is coming
birthday
up
to
next.
you.
How do you feel about that?
I love Dr. Martin Luther King. I feel he was a very inspirational man, and I feel like as a child, I got exposed to that a lot. My school in elementary was predominantly black, so it was like it was like a real holiday, like just like any other holiday, like Christmas or Valentine's Day or anything like that. It was enough light shined on that, and I feel like he was a great impact. And I feel like a lot of people know Dr. Martin Luther King as I have a dream. Like, that's, if you don't know that, then where have you been? Like, where do you live under a rock? Because he has an impact on anybody. I don't care what anybody says. Like, he has an impact on everyone's life some way. His goal was for everyone to be equal, everyone to be one. And we're still fighting for that today.
How do you feel you can continue the dream since you brought up his dream?
I think... Or do you want to go?
Well, I just hope that I can, you know, learn to advocate for people whose, you know, voices don't have a lot of currency in today's society. And, like, you know, if people won't listen to people of color advocating for their rights, maybe I could help in some way. Like, if you guys need me to do something, just tell me. Because I was raised in, like, I'd say a very sheltered, like, Albany is very sheltered, I'd say, so I haven't really been exposed to any of, like, the terrible things that, like, a lot of people tell me about around here. So, yeah, I'm not streetwise, please help me.
I think for me, all I can do is try harder and try to make a career out of myself and just strive and don't let anyone stop me from that goal, because he didn't let anyone stop him. He going to jail multiple times, like,
He was not afraid.
Exactly. Like,
damn.
I was talking to my family about that. If I had to live in those times, I would have gave up. And I feel like that's bad, but I just would have, like, I don't want to keep going to jail. Like, I can't, like, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so I feel like that's all I can do, is I could just make sure I have an education, make sure that I'm going to college to get the career and set my life up so I could help my community or help those younger kids. Because I know for me, like, I'm going to have younger siblings, and I want them to see that they are able to do that. Because a lot of kids are discouraged now, and they feel like they have to become a rapper or something to be successful. Like, that's not what you have to do. Mm-hmm. Education is the highest,
It is absolutely crucial.
For me to continue the journey, is basically I just have to continue what my ancestors and elders did before me, because, you know, they all fought for the amount of freedom I have today. You know, I remember I asked my grandmother, you know, she went through, what was it like for her growing up, and she told me that within her high school experience, when it came to prom king and queen, that they wouldn't allow none of the black kids to, I don't even think allow them to even get voted for. And they obviously would have wanted everything, and they tried to basically exclude them from prom. So what they did is they made their own prom, and she wasn't part of it, but the school had mysteriously burned down out of nowhere. That's just the tea for that, yeah. Because there's a lot of course, you know, stuff going on at the school. But just basically, just continue fighting for the freedom that I've gained or been allowed to have today, so that way, you know, the next generation can have even more. I see myself prominently within my career advocating 24/7, whether it's doing fashion or entertainment. It's still always going to be for the people and by the people.
Why can't all of humanity just do one great big hug? Let's just
because people.
I think it's because, like, it's so much oppression and just built up aggression towards everyone. Like, for me, I feel just like everything that's going on now, in the 1950s, the police, like we act like police and police brutality is so new. Like, it's a photo that I remember seeing when I was younger. It was a young black man on the floor, and the police was just holding the firefighter hose at him, and that's strong power and just blowing him away. Like, they did not care, and I feel like it is what it is now. And like the Ku Klux Klan, like they're police, like they were just that's what it is now. It's just not, and they are still active members of that, and I feel it's never going to be. We're not ever going to be equal. We're not ever going to be okay, because there's always going to be someone white and feel like they're better than us, and they have a higher power because of who we are. And I feel like that goes with men and women. Like, it doesn't, like, gender-wise. It doesn't matter about race. Like, it's always going to be a difference. Like, recently, not to sidetrack, but just to give a point, with E, it was a host. I forgot her name, but she had found out that she was getting paid like significantly less than the other co-hosts, and she quit. And at the Golden Globes,
I can know the numbers. She was getting paid $80 for the entire day, but he got like a $2.6 million contract.
$2.6 million?
And so like she quit, and then everybody at the Golden Globes was just like, I'm not watching E, I'm not supporting E until you guys just give her that. And I feel like there's never going to be equal, because everyone has something instilled into their heads that this is the way life is supposed to be. And until everyone agrees on, let's actually make a change, that's never going to happen, because everybody is going to be old-fashioned. They're always going to believe in what they believe in.
How do you make a difference? Because, I mean, you know, if we're thinking about Martin Luther King Jr., well, his answer was always love. Love thy enemy, love thy neighbor. And I don't know. That's something that I personally conflict and deal with a lot. There's times where, you know, I do love thy enemy, and I'll still give that positive energy. But there's other times where I know where I stoop down to their level, and I try to, you know, hit harder and faster to make it stop. But of course, that's always going to keep it going. But what do you think? How do you make a difference?
I can only pray that I'll be continually learning and, like, you know, just updating, you know, the words I use and everything like that. Figuring out, like, what are the issues that are going on. Like, is there a certain cause that needs, you know, more people to support it? That kind of a thing.
How would you make a difference, Mia?
Like I said, like, just going to school and educating myself on that, and just trying to build an empire. Like, that sounds corny, but like trying to build an empire. If you build an empire and you get young African American kids and you try to bring them in and you just get all these people, I feel like you could overcome. Because that's one thing, like, people hate seeing is young, smart black men and women. They hate that. They hate that so much. They want to keep us down and not believe that we can be something of ourselves. And I feel like that's what hurt people the most. Because we seen it. As soon as Obama became president, they was hurt. And as soon as Trump became president, that was their time. That was their time to shine. That was their time to say, "Oh, we didn't go anywhere. We're still here." Like, and I feel like that's what hurts people, is just to see a strong group of young African American men and women, young, old, it don't really matter. Just seeing that, them being strong and not being a sellout. Because I feel like that's what a lot of our rich black men and women are. They became sellouts. And like Miss Thompson was telling us, like, we're still slaves. Like, we're still slaves. We're still chained. Like, we're still under these people's control because we have no choice. And I feel that's how a lot of people's power comes. Like, you gotta sign this deal if you want to get this. And it's like, well, mama, like, we gotta get this money, like, money, to where they're like, okay. And that's where we just kind of lose ourselves, because that.
Do you feel, though, that, you know, that within, because every generation was going up, and somewhere around the generations, it slipped and it just fell out, and, you know, there's just the gap. We saw it going down, just losing our momentum. Do you feel that now, you know, we're at a point within our generation where we see the gap and we see what it used to be like to when it was going down to what it is now, what happened, and that, you know, do you feel that within our generation that we feel such a need to be like the older generations and to fill that gap? Do you feel the need to fill in the gap?
Well, that's a hard one to answer. What do you think?
I feel it's kind of weird that as a white person, I feel personally accountable for a lot of the things that, you know, white people in history have done. So I definitely do want to figure out, you know, how I can change the world for the better and help in the ways that I can and am needed. But I also just don't want to be like this white savior, like, oh, I'm going to save her. No, that's not my idea. I'm just like, I just want to help where I can.
All right. And we're going to end with Donny Hathaway singing Someday We'll All Be Free. Do you have something?
But before we close, we're going to ask Mia and Anna to read excerpts from Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech.
Let freedom ring from the prestigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alpines of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia.
Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
Thank you for listening to 98.9 KOSARadio.org, where minds, words, music, and rhymes meet.